Welcome to Ambassador's Daily Banquet. I am God's servant David F. Nwefulu. Prepare your heart for fresh revelation that will empower your faith.
All right, today we're jumping into a devotional from author David F. Nwefulu called The Cross and Humble Service. And it really gets into this powerful, almost counterintuitive idea about what real leadership looks like. Okay, let's get into it.
So the entire message really hinges on this one verse from Matthew. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? It just completely flips our normal idea of leadership on its head. The idea that to be great, to be a leader, you first have to serve. Here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with that leadership paradox, then explore its deep connection to the cross. We'll look at the ultimate example of this in action and figure out how it applies to our lives today. Then we'll get into a direct call to action and talk about the source's bigger mission.
Okay, so our first stop is really unpacking this core idea, this paradox. The concept that to truly lead, you first have to become a servant. This is the foundation that everything else we're going to talk about is built on. Next up, we're going to see how the source connects this idea of service directly to the theology of the cross. This is where we get to the heart of the principle itself.
So let's define our terms. What exactly is humble service? According to the source, it's not just about being helpful here and there. It's a very specific kind of selflessness, one that's rooted in the example of Jesus, who, as the text points out, was Lord of all but chose to serve.
And you know, this kind of service doesn't just happen by accident. The author argues it requires three key ingredients. You need humility to actually put others before yourself. You need empathy to understand what they're going through. And you need intentionality. It has to be a conscious choice, not just a passive act.
So the theory is one thing, right? But the devotional gives us a really vivid story to show exactly what this principle looks like in action. The source zeroes in on that story from the Gospel of John where Jesus washes his disciples' feet. I mean, the context here is everything. He's their leader, their teacher, and the action itself, that was a job for the lowest servant in the house. According to the text, what he's doing here is completely redefining leadership, turning it from a position of power into a radical act of service. Okay, so that's the biblical foundation. But what about us? How does this idea translate into the 21st century? Let's talk about the practical side of all this.
The source gives us these two competing models of leadership. On one side, you've got service-oriented leadership. The claim is that this path earns you trust, it builds community. On the other side, you've got the self-serving leader, who's all about personal gain and recognition. And according to this devotional, that path, well, it ultimately leads to isolation.
And what does this actually look like today? The devotional offers some pretty concrete examples. Things like mentoring someone, actively helping people in need, or choosing to prioritize what the text calls kingdom priorities over your own personal ambition. This brings us to the part where the devotional stops explaining and starts challenging. It shifts the focus directly onto the reader, onto us, and asks us to apply this personally.
And here's the question it wants us to wrestle with. It's a real moment for self-reflection. It's not just about what you do, but why you do it. Are you serving others with a willing heart, or is it more out of a sense of obligation, a reluctant chore?
And right after that moment of introspection, the source gives us the next step, a clear, direct call to action. It's about making a conscious decision, a commitment to let humility and service be your North Star in life, especially when you're in any kind of leadership role.
Finally, the devotional shows us that this personal challenge isn't just an isolated thing. It's actually part of a much bigger vision, a mission called Operation 500 Million Souls for Christ, and it invites readers to get involved.
The devotional lays out three specific ways to participate. You can become a prayer partner, you can volunteer as a missionary, or you can become what it calls a kingdom investor by supporting the organization's work financially. So, here's the bottom line. The devotional is really honest that this path of humble service is not the easy route. It's described as costly, but the promise is that the result is absolutely transformative for you, for the people around you, and for the bigger picture. And that really leaves us with the big question that sits at the heart of this entire message, a question for all of us to think about. What is the true cost, and what is the true reward?
Thank you for watching. Please share, like, and comment. Your host, God's servant, David F. Nwefulu.